I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. My name's David, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for about 8 years now. When we first got together, I honestly thought I'd found the one. She was sharp, funny, a little bitchy, but in a way that I found charming. We had what I thought was a pretty good life, decent jobs, a nice house, and a mutual understanding that we'd build something solid. Or so I thought. Lately, though, I'd started noticing strange things. Small stuff at first, little missed calls, weird texts at odd hours, often deleted before I could see what they were. Lisa would get tense when I mentioned her phone, and she'd brush it off with some snarky comment about how I was paranoid or that I was always accusing her of something. But it wasn't just that. There were other signs. She started wearing more makeup when she left for work, staying late at the office more often, and her attitude had become even more bitchy and dismissive. Like she was angry at me just for breathing. One night, I decided to do some digging. I got suspicious because of the way her phone kept pinging with odd GPS locations. When I checked her order history online, yeah, I know, stalker move, I saw something that made my stomach drop. There were frequent purchases from this weird little chemistry supply company, stuff I wasn't familiar with. But what really caught my eye was the name on the orders, Home Protein Pro. I'd never heard of it before, but I knew we didn't order anything like that. And the orders kept coming when I was out of town for work, sometimes late at night, always in bundles of ingredients I couldn't identify. My mind started racing. She'd always been bitchy about my work trips, saying I was never around, and honestly, I'd started feeling guilty about that. But now, I wasn't so sure she was upset because I was gone. I had this gnawing feeling that she was doing something else, something she didn't want me to find out. One day, I took a closer look at the latest delivery. It was left at the back door, and I saw the packaging, strange, high-tech labels, with chemical compounds I couldn't even pronounce. My first instinct was to confront her, but I wanted to be sure. So I stayed quiet, watching her from a distance. She was acting weird, snapping at me over nothing, sneaking glances at her phone, and sometimes even rushing out of the house late at night. Whatever was going on, it wasn't normal. Then I found myself accidentally discovering something that changed everything. An email left open on her laptop while she was in the shower. It was from some guy named Mark, talking about the latest batch and meeting up later for the real deal. The language was suggestive, loaded with hints of something more than just chemistry experiments. My heart sank. This was cheating, no doubt about it. And she'd been lying to my face about everything, claiming she was working late at the office or doing girls' nights with her friends. All the while, she was screwing around and maintaining some kind of secret side project, probably involving her home protein printer and whatever chemicals she'd been ordering. I was stunned. It was like a punch to the gut. I'd never imagined she'd do something like this. Never thought she'd cheat on me, especially not with some guy who's probably just another one of her sick little thrill-seeking adventures. That's when I knew I had to confront her. But I also knew I had to plan carefully, because now everything had changed. I wasn't just worried about losing her. I was furious and betrayed at a level I'd never experienced before. I remember the moment I found that email clearly. My hands were trembling as I stared at the screen, reading through Mark's messages. It all hit me like a freight train. She'd been lying right to my face and doing God knows what behind my back with this guy. I felt an almost surreal mixture of anger, hurt, and a kind of numb disbelief. How could she do this? After everything we'd been through, after all those nights I was away trying to build a future, she was out there screwing around with some guy who probably didn't mean anything to her. But clearly she was using him for something, something chemical, something secret. The thought of her secretly maintaining the protein printer, mixing chemicals I didn't understand, all while lying to me, made my blood boil. I took a deep breath, trying to cool down because I knew if I didn't keep my head, I'd do something I'd regret. I closed her laptop gently, placed it back where I found it, and went into the garage. I needed a plan. I'd always been practical. If anything, the chemistry part was kind of fascinating in a terrifying way. I knew enough from my own background in engineering to realize that what she was doing, this home gastronomy with chemicals, was dangerous. But I also knew this wasn't just about chemicals. It was about trust, loyalty, and respect. And she had shattered all of that. That night I didn't sleep much. My mind was racing with thoughts of what she was up to, what she was capable of, and how I was going to handle this. I decided I'd confront her, but not just in some angry outburst. No, I needed to be smart, collect evidence, understand exactly what she was doing, and then decide what my next move was. I knew I couldn't just accuse her without proof. That would be reckless. So I started doing my own digging, a kind of investigation into her home protein printer and the chemical orders she'd been making. I wanted to understand what she'd been working on and, more importantly, what she'd been hiding from me. The next day, I went to her phone, her email, her online orders, anything that might give me clues. I found more strange transactions, some labeled with code names that, when I looked them up, turned out to be chemicals used in advanced molecular gastronomy, ingredients that can alter textures, flavors, even nutritional content in ways I'd never imagined. Then I remembered the strange way she'd been acting, more bitchy and dismissive, snapping at me for no reason. It all fit into this picture of her being involved in some covert project, probably with Mark, trying to create some sort of superfood or chemical concoction. I was starting to see the pattern. She'd gotten bored, gone down this rabbit hole of chemistry and deception, and I was the last person she was thinking about. All the while, she'd painted herself as the victim, saying I was neglecting her, that I was always traveling. But really, she was just hiding her new obsession, her cheating, and her chemical experiments. It made me feel sick, so I decided I had enough evidence. I couldn't let her keep lying and sneaking around. I set up a hidden camera in the living room, nothing big, just enough to catch her in. The act, I needed to see her reaction when I finally confronted her face to face. I wasn't sure what I'd say yet, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I needed to see her true colors, and I needed to do it soon. Because this whole situation was spiraling out of control, and I could feel it in my gut. Things were about to explode. That evening, I sat in the dark, watching the camera feed on my phone. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards. I kept replaying everything I'd uncovered, the chemical orders, the secret emails, her strange behavior, and trying to brace myself for what was coming. Honestly, part of me wanted to just walk away, pretend I hadn't seen anything, and forget this whole mess. But I knew I couldn't do that. Not after what I'd found. Then, around 9:30 p.m., she came home. I recognized her car pulling into the driveway, and my stomach clenched. She was acting normal at first, kinda hurried, like she was trying to hide something. But then she stepped inside. That's when I saw her, sitting on the couch, fiddling with her phone. I pressed record, and that's when it all started. She was texting someone, probably Mark, talking about the final batch and meeting up later. Her fingers moved quickly, her face set in a sort of sneaky smirk. I was boiling inside, but I kept calm. I waited until she put the phone down, then I decided it was time. I went into the living room, trying to sound casual but firm. "Hey, Lisa, we need to talk, now." Her eyes flicked to me, and her smile faltered just a little. Typical. She tried to brush it off, saying she was just catching up with a friend, but I wasn't buying it. "So, I've been looking into your little chemistry project," I said, my voice steady but angry. "And I found emails, transactions, and a bunch of stuff that makes it pretty clear you've been lying. About everything. About where you're going, who you're talking to, and what you're really doing." She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. "Oh, please, David, you're overreacting. I was just experimenting with some food stuff. It's not a big deal. You're always accusing me of stuff. Maybe you're the one with the problem." I shook my head. "No, Lisa, it's a huge deal. You've been cheating on me, lying about your whereabouts, and secretly working on this chemical mess in our house. And now I see what it's all about. You're messing around with this Mark guy, probably screwing him and cooking up some chemical crap that I don't even understand." She scoffed. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're just jealous because I have interests of my own. If you don't like it, maybe you should just go." That was when I saw her slip her phone into her pocket. The game was obvious. She'd been caught, and she knew it. At that moment, I felt a cold fury rise in me. But I also felt a crushing sadness, like everything I'd believed in, every moment we'd shared was nothing but a lie. I wanted to scream, to yell at her, to demand answers. But I just stood there, staring at her, feeling the full weight of betrayal. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face and cheat on me with some guy she barely knew? And all the while she'd been lying about her secret chemical experiments, about her obsession with that stupid protein printer, and about her supposed bitchy attitude being just stress. That night I didn't sleep. I kept replaying her words, her sneers, and that email from Mark. I felt crushed, angry, and lost. I knew I had to decide what to do, but part of me still clung to the hope that maybe I could fix this somehow. Yet deep down, I knew the damage was done. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. And I was left sitting in the dark, questioning everything I thought I knew about my wife, my marriage, and myself. The next morning hit me like a brick wall. I woke up feeling hollow, drained, and pretty damn furious. My mind kept circling back to everything I'd uncovered: her secret chemical orders, the emails with Mark, that sneaky little smirk on her face when I confronted her. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. All those nights I spent working late or traveling, she was out there, probably screwing around and cooking up some mad scientist mess in our home. I kept thinking about the chemicals, the molecular gastronomy stuff I didn't understand. How could she be so reckless, so dishonest? I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her keep lying. I decided I needed hard evidence, something concrete to expose her. I started planning. First, I set up hidden cameras all around the house: living room, kitchen, her office. I needed her in the act, in full betrayal mode, to really understand what I was up against. Then I started reviewing everything I'd found, trying to piece together her timeline: when she was sneaking away, who she was meeting, what she was doing with all those chemicals. As the day went on, I felt a mixture of anger and sadness. I kept telling myself I deserved better than this. I deserved someone faithful, honest. Not some sneaky wife running some chemical lab in our house, screwing around with my trust and my life. My stomach clenched at the thought of her lying to me all this time, pretending she was just into some hobby, some culinary experiment. Hell, it was more than that. It was a full-blown betrayal. In the late afternoon, I decided to confront her again, but this time with proof. I waited until she got home from work, which she insisted was a big project she'd been working on with her chemistry buddy, Mark. She looked tense, like she knew she'd been caught, but she kept her bitchy smirk in place. I blocked her path as she walked through the door, holding up my phone with the recordings I'd made. "Lisa," I said, voice cold but steady, "we need to talk. And I have the evidence right here. You've been lying to me, cheating on me, and messing around with some chemical experiments in our home. And I think you know exactly what I'm talking about." She scoffed, trying to brush past me. "Oh, really? You're just overreacting. I was just—" "No, Lisa," I interrupted. "I saw your emails, your orders, those texts from Mark. You've been screwing him, haven't you, while pretending to be this perfect wife? All those late nights, all those chemical experiments, I know what they were for now. You're not just cooking fancy food, you're doing something dangerous, something stupid." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're paranoid like always. I didn't cheat on you. I was just experimenting, that's it. And if you can't trust me, maybe we're better off apart." That's when I saw her slip her phone into her pocket again. I snapped a picture of her face, her sneer, her defiance. I felt a wave of disgust and heartbreak. She was lying through her teeth, trying to save what was left of her ego, but I wasn't going to let her. I had enough. I told her I'd had enough of her lies, her deception, her cheating. For the first time in years, I felt like I was truly waking up. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who'd betray everything we'd built. I told her I wanted her out of the house immediately. I didn't care about the chemical experiments anymore. All I cared about was ending this nightmare, ending her lies, and trying to save whatever dignity I had left. As she stormed out, yelling about how I was overreacting, how I didn't understand her genius, I just stood there numb. Part of me wanted to cry, part of me wanted to scream. But mostly I just felt exhausted. I knew this wasn't over yet, not by a long shot, but I also knew that from now on my life would never be the same. After she left, I spent the rest of the evening just staring at the walls, trying to process everything. The house suddenly felt huge and empty, like it was mocking me with its silence. I kept replaying her sneers, her lies, that smug look she always had when she thought she was getting away with something. The worst part was realizing how deeply she'd betrayed me, not just as a wife, but as a partner, as someone I trusted with my life. I kept asking myself, how could I have missed all the signs? How could I have been so blind? I knew I couldn't just sit there feeling sorry for myself. I had to plan my next move. I spent hours researching everything I could about those chemicals she was ordering: molecular gastronomy, advanced chemistry, the risks involved, and I learned enough to realize she was playing with fire, not just risking her own health, but potentially putting us both in danger if she kept going. That realization made my stomach turn even more. I also dug deeper into her online activity, trying to find anything I might have missed. I set up a new camera in the bedroom, hoping to catch her sneaking back in or talking to Mark again. I even called a lawyer to understand my rights, because I knew this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. There were legal and safety issues involved with her chemical experiments, and I needed to protect myself. The lawyer told me I should gather all evidence, document everything, and consider my options carefully, because this was serious. I felt a mix of anger and sadness boiling inside me. Part of me wanted to confront her again, demand answers, hold her accountable, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. At least now I knew the truth. The person I thought was my wife was someone else entirely. She was someone who lied, cheated, and risked everything for her obsession with chemicals and some guy named Mark. That realization was a punch to the gut, but it also freed me from the false hope that we could somehow fix this. By late evening, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her manipulate or control the situation anymore. I was going to get out, but I had to do it right, legally and carefully. I started packing some essentials, just enough to get by if I needed to leave quickly. I also made a plan to tell her I wanted a separation, and I was going to consult with an attorney about how to proceed with the divorce, especially considering her reckless experiments and the potential danger they could cause. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling empty but also strangely resolved. I knew I'd been betrayed at a level I never thought possible, but I also realized I had to put myself first now. I needed to protect myself from whatever she was up to, and I had to start rebuilding my life. The most painful part was knowing I'd lost the woman I loved, or thought I did. But I also knew this was a wake-up call, a brutal but necessary one. The trust was shattered, and I wasn't going to pretend otherwise anymore. I would move on somehow, even if it hurt like hell. The days that followed were a blur of legal consultations, packing, and trying to keep my emotions in check. Every time I thought I had a grip on things, the memory of her sneering face or the emails from Mark would slam into me again. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, how someone I trusted with my life could turn into a stranger so quickly, but I also knew I had to focus. Protecting myself was the priority now. I moved out of the house a week later. I found a small apartment where I could breathe without her presence looming over me. It was a fresh start in many ways, but the scars from everything still stung. I handed over all the evidence I'd collected to my lawyer, making sure the divorce process would be as straightforward as possible. Her chemical experiments, her lies, her cheating, they all played into my decision. I knew she had no regard for safety or honesty, and I wasn't about to stay around and be collateral damage. Looking back, I realized the biggest lesson I learned is how dangerous it is to ignore the signs of betrayal. I also learned not to be so trusting, especially with someone who can lie so convincingly. The chemical side of her obsession was just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath that was a woman willing to do almost anything to satisfy her own selfish desires. It's a bitter pill, but I had to accept it. I've been focusing on rebuilding my life. I've started therapy to deal with the emotional fallout, and I've thrown myself into work and hobbies that keep me grounded. It's not easy, but each day gets a little better. I tell myself I'm better off without her, without the deception, the lies, the risk of that dangerous chemistry in our home. To anyone out there in a similar situation, I'll say this: Trust your gut. Pay attention to the small signs before they turn into huge betrayals. Don't ignore your instincts, and don't make excuses for someone's bad behavior. When you know in your heart that someone isn't who they pretend to be, don't wait too long to act. Because once the trust is broken, it's almost impossible to get back. And sometimes, walking away is the only way to save yourself. That's what I did. I lost a lot, but I also gained clarity and the chance to start over. Maybe someday I'll look back and see this as a turning point, a painful but necessary lesson. For now, I just focus on moving forward, learning to trust myself again, and rebuilding what I lost. Because at the end of the day, no chemical experiment, no secret affair, is worth losing everything that truly matters.